Thought I'd just say a couple words about Kundalini. Just in terms of the experience, we've talked about the theory of it in the very first session, but I haven't talked much about the sort of popular idea of, Kundalini experience. So first, just a couple things, real simple, that most of the symptoms of Kundalini that you may read about or hear about, sweating and movements and all of that, it's that is all the result of actually the resistance in the nadis, the obstructions in the nadis to Kundalini. That's what gives rise to the heat, the sweating, the whatever, the sensations, ants crawling up the spine, whatever it might be. That's due to the resistance. If you had a perfectly clear, pure body that had been, and Kundalini was fully awakened on all the levels of the koshas, completely pure and clear, then you wouldn't have any of those symptoms. You would just be a being of light and bliss. But it's only because of the resistance that you get those symptoms. So if some of those, and of course, because we're not just perfectly pure beings of light and bliss, it's likely that at some point, as Kundalini awakens, you will experience some degree of that. You'll feel like maybe an immense power in your body, in your nervous system, in your subtle body, just immense. And it may cause something like, sensations of heat on the skin or tingling or whatever. It can be like that. And there may also be some purification, like you might just be burning through the clouds. If you've read the Whispers of the Himalaya, I kind of give an account of some of what I went through in that experience, which was very intense for me at that time. And that was a lot of purification. And so it's good to know about that, to know that there can be purification. But you can also modulate it by, easing off. You don't have to always have pedal to the metal. You can ease off to the degree that, it's a smooth ride. There's this concept of the smooth ride and the bumpy ride. If you have a bumpy, muddy road, you can just floor it and go over all the potholes and mud splashes everywhere. You'll get through all of it, but you might end up breaking your axle or something, or you can just ease your way through the potholes. You'll still get through it. It'll just take longer. So you can modulate it like that. We don't want to have mud all over the place, so to speak. But as long as you feel comfortable emotionally and always remembering that if you do have some, smoke that's coming emotional and maybe you feel a little blue someday or something like that, in my experience, it's always the case that after that period, there's always tremendously more bliss afterwards. Yeah, you get when those clouds clear, then the sun shines. So always keep that in mind too. So during this course, have any of you experienced any of that?
I have a lot of vibration, which I find very enjoyable.
Oh, good. Okay.
And so I don't know if that counts as.
When you say vibration, you mean you physically feel some vibration?
Yeah, like I'm plugged into an electric socket and every cell is vibrating.
There you go. Yeah. Yep. That's it.
So is that purification?
Yes, it is. It's transformation. It's purification. Remember, I've talked about breaking down that imaginary boundary between consciousness and the body. Imaginary simply because ultimately the body is consciousness, just as everything is consciousness, right? But we see it and experience it as very different. This body is solid material. Consciousness is entirely abstract. So, but as that Shakti, which is an aspect of consciousness, awakens and starts to penetrate into all the nadis and throughout your system, then it's really that, consciousness now is flowing into the physical realm, tangibly. And that causes a lot of transformation. So that tingling and the vibration and whatever those sensations may be is that purification, that transformation. And this is, as I've said before, I mean, taken to the ultimate possible degree, in theory, you can transform this body, physical body, into a body of light and then into a body of consciousness itself. And that's a whole different story. But we're at a level where we can still create tremendous transformation, physically, and purify the body physically and improve health tremendously. Get rid of those obstructions, so there's a smooth, even, harmonious flow of prana. Health, everything becomes balanced, your system becomes balanced, health becomes improved. And of course, emotionally, that will correlate with emotional balance, and mentally, much expanded awareness, much more creativity. So just more light on all levels. So yes, that tingling and vibrating and all that is a symptom of the purification that's, making the way for this transformation.
So does the tingling eventually end? Is that?
Yeah, eventually. Just like, at some point in your meditation career, some people have movements, we've talked about that. Eventually it will end. Same thing with the tingling.
Okay.
Yep. When it's completely integrated and purified, then, you won't have the symptoms of that, the melting of those obstructions. You'll just have that clear light of pure divine consciousness filling your being.
Cool.
Yeah, cool. All right. Any other questions before we go? Yes, Raj.
Not directly related to Kundalini, but you mentioned like go up Chitrani and go to the next chakra and etc. And some days I can feel what I think like a very subtle, fine presence of some, like I do not know how to describe it, a line of nadi or what have you. But at other times, it is, no matter how much I try, it just is completely absent or is very spotty and absent. Do you know if there is any kind of way to make it more present, or why? What's the explanation, and how do I harness it more?
Well, I think it's, like anything in meditation, it has to do with continued practice, and with that purification, and with that clarity of perception at subtle levels. And don't try. When you said, no matter how hard I try, Ikes. We're not trying, So that's like that's the number one priority, is we don't try. It's actually, in fact, you're absolutely right. The harder you try, the more elusive it will be, because when you try, it agitates the awareness and you go to a grosser level. So the subtlety of perception gets lost then. So you definitely want to have the emphasis on very effortless. Again, it's interesting, this idea of effortlessness. It opens the door to an experience of charm and bliss. And in that charm and bliss, it attracts the mind, and the mind automatically starts to become concentrated. But it's not that the mind is concentrating, okay? So you don't concentrate, no, but rather you just have that delicate, subtle experience, just savor it, just enjoy it. And once that charm opens up, it'll just pull the awareness into that state of where there's some concentration, and then the clarity will start to come more and more. And of course, that's also as the Kundalini awakens and becomes, fills your being more, then the quote concentration becomes immense. And it's not even, it's funny because it's not even like you're meditating. The idea of that people have of meditation when you first start, it's like something that you're doing in your mind. At the point where the Kundalini is really getting full, mind is gone. Mind isn't there much at all. And so it's not really anything like meditation was in the beginning, where you had a mind. And it's just a totally different experience. It's like you're meditated by that divine consciousness / energy, and it's not you that's doing it. And so anyway, to get to that point, we're not going to get there by making an effort, but rather by that very delicate, opening, just subtle perception that'll start to pull us into that bliss, and that will awaken that Shakti. Anyway, so I hope that helps. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
It's why it seems like a fine line between, like the complexity that we're dealing with in these techniques, a fine line between that complexity and it appears you might need to make an effort to do all those things, but actually it's not so. It's more like directing. You're just directing the attention, and then it's the power of the Shakti that does it. And at that point, yeah, it's really, it gets really amazing.